Good morning.
Good
Welcome
morning.
to United Way's Community First Conversation. Thank you for joining us today. Today we're having a conversation about women, particularly Black women. And I am incredibly grateful to have some extraordinary women joining us today. And before we begin our conversation today, I wanted us to pause for a moment. Today is not only an incredible day to not only honor Black women, but I also want to honor the memory of an incredible Black woman. Her name is Breonna Taylor. As most of us know, Breonna Taylor was murdered on May 13th. And up until today, she haven't seen justice for her murder. So today would have been her 27th birthday. So I'd like to begin by having a moment of silence in her honor. Thank you. So without further ado, we have four extraordinary women joining us today, and I'm incredibly honored. As I said earlier, we are having a community first conversation today in honor of Black women. And it was really intentional to have this conversation today, specifically about Black women, because we often talk about Black women and we don't necessarily focus on us. And I was incredibly hesitant to ask our panel today to do another thing because I know they're incredibly busy women, but each one I reached out to said yes without hesitation, even though they have a number of things on their plate. And so without further ado, I'd love for us to be introduced to these extraordinary women. And I'd like to start first with Melissa Husband. Melissa Husband, would you introduce yourself, please?
Angie, thank you so much for having me today. And I'm actually really honored to be on the panel with such amazing women. I actually know everyone on the panel with the exception of Grace. I've worked side by side with all of you for many years. So I want to thank you for having me. My position right now, I'm the Deputy Secretary of State for the Rhode Island Department of State. I have two beautiful little girls, 9 and 15. I live in the south side of Providence, and I am blessed to have an amazing husband. So I think that that's all I'm going to say to introduce myself right now.
Thank you, Melissa. Hilina?
Absolutely, and I'm extremely just honored to be here with all of you as well. And as Melissa said, when Angie calls and asks you to do something, not only do you say yes, you actually show up with great intentions. And I know that that's why we're all here. Not that we have all the answers, but we want to talk about the potential answers and how we move forward. My name is Hilina Ajakaiye. Like Angie said, I also live in Providence with my two children, Darius and Tyson, who are 11 and 13. I have an incredible husband who is, has been extremely supportive. This has been tough as a mother to have some dialogue with my young children, and that's been a journey. And in a professional aspect, I am the Executive Vice President for the Greater Boston Convention and Visitors Bureau. And I am also the founder and executive director for the R.I.S.E Women's Leadership Conference. But most importantly, today I'm here as a mother and as a friend to these incredible women, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Hilina. Diana?
I think she's on mute.
Diana, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you, we can see
Okay.
you.
I apologize. Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Angie, for allowing me to be amongst so many beautiful women today. I would like to introduce myself as Diana Garlington. I am a community advocate and a mother. Just to briefly speak about what we're going to speak about today, racism does play a big part in, the situation that we are challenged with today. And I talk to a lot of students on a daily basis who are not people of color, and just try to explain to them what we're going through and what we need to do to get to a better space with it. So I'm very excited to be able to speak in regards to that today.
Grace, thank you, Diana.
You're welcome.
You're on mute, Grace.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Just to echo what all of the other three women have said, I'm greatly honored to be a part of this call amidst such wonderful women. Thank you so much, Angie, for thinking about me and including me in this conversation that is really, really essential to our times. I am a licensed independent clinical social worker and the co-founder of United Path. It's a mental health clinic located in Pawtucket, Rhode Island. And our mission and our attention is very much focused on creating a space for people that look like us to have a place where they can go to receive some of the support that is really necessary in the work that we do as mothers. I am a mother to two lovely babies. I have a 4-year-old and a 4-month-old. So I'm really, really excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. So I figured I'd begin our conversation with the first question is, how are you doing? Right now in this space, that seems like a really loaded question, right? How are each and every one of you doing in this space right now? Diana, how are you doing?
I would have to say I'm doing a lot better than I was when it first began. Just in general, to be one that who lost a child, and to see a lot of the statements that came out where they were saying that the young man had screamed for his mom, when that was happening. It really, it hurt my heart for a long time. So I just had to kind of settle myself down and figure out what I needed to do to get myself back in control, just to, have that emotion of feeling that pain. It weighed very heavy on me for a while. But I began to, get back out in the community and speak with a lot of the other leaders in the community, and it's been helping me a lot.
Hilina, how are you doing?
I think you said it. That's a huge question to answer these days, and generally that would be a 1 or 2 word answer for me. And that's primarily because I try to find the good and the positive in everything. And so if I could tell you how I'm doing right now, I would really honestly tell you that I'm struggling to find the right voice for the right audience, to make sure that you're saying things to not only shed light, because that's what we want to do. We want to shed light on what we know to be true, what we know that is not a new situation. In addition to that, we want to say things that are going to be part of the solution, but there are emotions involved. And, I said in the beginning in my introduction that one of the primary reasons I'm struggling is that we have to teach our children what's going on, answer their questions at 6 a.m. in the morning, or when they wake up at 11:35 on a Tuesday night because there's a helicopter going over our house in Providence. Those are difficult conversations, but trying not to think about myself, because I know that there are folks like Diana who, this brings up a lot of emotions for a lot of people that have been going on for many, many years. And so stopping long enough to get out of my own way and not focus on myself, but also take the time to reach out to my friends of all different backgrounds who are struggling to figure out what to say, how to feel, and how to be there for everyone in the right way. So in short, I would tell you, I'm not okay. I want to be better. This helps. This helps.
Grace, how are you doing?
That is a very loaded question, Angie. As a Black mother and a mental health provider, I've been grappling with this question over the last week pretty intensely, because the reality is when things like this fall on us, life doesn't stop for us, right? Our responsibilities are still here. I have to be a mom. I have to be a caregiver, the breadwinner of my family, and do the work of holding space for other people that are also struggling with these times. So our responsibilities doesn't stop. There isn't a place for respite. So trying to find the balance to manage all of this that's happening, plus the things I already had to juggle with in my own life, has been quite difficult. And I think anger is a default emotion for a lot of us. And the thing about anger is such an action-oriented emotion. So it's our default emotion because it's like, okay, now I feel this emotion. I want to do more. I want to do things. I want to post on social media more. I want to go to the protest and do all of these things because this is what I'm accustomed to just doing. So for me, it was really important that I stop and step back and really assess what are the true emotions that I was feeling in this time. And I think some of the real emotions that really came up for me was just like a feeling of helplessness, hopelessness, deep sadness and hurt, and just really confused about the state of the world. So I've just been really trying to be introspective and be really self-aware about what I'm feeling and not just defaulting to being angry.
Melissa, how are you doing?
I have very similar feelings. I'm struggling every day to just show up. I'm struggling every day to understand what's going on in the world. I'm struggling every day to keep a smile on my face and to move forward. I feel very similar to Grace. I feel helpless. I've felt very sad. And I feel like I don't really have the answers. When I talk to my children, when I look at my children and have to explain this to them, it's very painful. It's painful. And I think one of my strongest feelings right now is failure. I feel like I'm failing my children because I am teaching them all the things that I hope they will experience in life and not the realities of what they're going to experience as Black women in America. I'm teaching them that if you do the right thing, that you won't ever have to worry about getting in trouble, having bad experiences with police officers. You won't ever have to experience those things. I tell them that education is the greatest equalizer when I know that that's not true. That with a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a doctorate, racist people will see you for only the color of your skin. It is very difficult for me to talk to my children and genuinely want the best for them, knowing that what I'm saying to them may be a lie. That's what it feels like to me right now. I know that my daughter is going to go to college in a couple years, and I want for her so bad to have the college experience that is sold to us. That's sold to us. But I know that when she steps on any college campus in this country, I know what she's going to experience because I experienced it, and that she may most certainly be robbed of that experience because of racism. It is very difficult right now as I sit in this and see what's going on and look at my beautiful children that have amazing hearts and spirits and all the hope in the world that what their mother is telling them is true. And right now in this moment, I feel like a failure because I'm not preparing them to be Black women in America. that's how I feel right now. That's where I'm at right now.
Thank you, Melissa. So one of the themes that I noticed that each one of you talked about is how are you doing? A lot of you talked about, several of you talked about service to the community. And oftentimes, how are you doing means doing more, right? Diana, you talked about it. You do a lot. And how are you doing meant doing more. And that's the thing for Black women, right? Oftentimes, how are you doing means doing an additional thing. Why? When are we going to take care of us? What's it going to take for us to take care of us? Hilina, you talk about you. What's it going to take for Hilina to take care of Hilina?
I think, I think we find giving care and getting care and define it in different ways every day. Most of the way I start my day, if not all, and that's just my nature, is how can I help someone else? And in that, and I think that Melissa and you know that as my close friends, is that in that, sometimes you forget that you're not okay to be okay for someone else. I think that at this particular time, I want to preserve who I am, right? I want to preserve the fact that my journey throughout, since I've been here in the United States, I got here at 12 years old from Ethiopia, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, where I didn't know the English language. And it was months after I got here, months. And I'll never forget the conversation I had with a student of a Caucasian descent who decided to call me the N-word. And at that time, I did not know what that was. But it didn't kill my spirit, because I remember when I got on the plane on a one-way flight to come to the United States, the one thing my mom asked me to do was care for others. Don't forget to take care of others. And that carried with me throughout. So that is, I think, partially, my husband would tell me often, stop. Everybody will be okay. Stop. You're always worried about, but I don't want this to change who I am. And Melissa talked about, I feel like I'm teaching my kids that you have to be strong all the time. You have to be okay. This is going to be okay. There is good in this world. And I don't want to change that narrative at all. But I also want to preserve some of their innocence. And how I'm taking care of myself is going back to who I am. I find myself down the road, upset, angry. And then I have to stop myself and say, hold on, Hilina, back down to the road, find out who you are, figure out who you are constantly on a daily basis. At 43 years old, I have to go back to who I am. And that's how I'm caring for myself. I read a lot of things that my mom wrote me to stay, less emotional every day. There hasn't been a day in the last, I think, 15 days that I haven't cried. And so I'm taking care of myself by going back to my roots and thinking about my mom and trying to be a good mom.
So Diana, you talked a little bit about service, and because I know you personally, I know your commitment to service in the community. Can you tell me a little bit more about what spurred your service? What was the impetus or commitment? What spurred your service to the community?
I was one of the moms who probably should have jumped in and did this work long before I have. But unfortunately, I lost my daughter. So, just sitting back and feeling like this was just a male thing. Once it happened, it woke me up. It taught me that, this is not just a male thing. And, just to go back to the situation of Brianna, it shows that, women are being taken out just like the guys are. And I had a lot of guilt because as a mother, I was feeling like, I didn't take the proper steps to protect Essence and, keep her safe and just away from this type of environment. So when that happened with her, I felt like it was my duty to go out and reach out to other females and make sure, that if I could at least save one, I'll be able to save the lives of many.
One of the things that came through our theme earlier was being strong and always having to be strong as a Black woman. Do we always have to be strong?
We always have to be strong. I know when you sent that question about strength and self-care, I had to really sit on that one. And I had to really figure out for myself why. Why do I feel that it's necessary for me to always be strong in all situations for all the people in my life? Why is that? And I realized it's because I watched my mother do it my entire life. I never saw my mother break down. My mother had me when she was 17 years old. And I have watched this woman be strong. And I have seen her make so much out of absolutely nothing. I've seen her raise 4 children and not blink twice. I have never seen my mother take a vacation on her own. I have never seen my mother have me time. I've always seen my mother be strong. I've always seen her be there for every family breakdown. That is all I've seen. And so I think that I am my mother's daughter. I have to be that for everyone because she was that for everyone. And I think that's where it comes from. And I must also say that in that moment, as I was thinking about my mother, I realized that I didn't know her journey. She never talked about her journey. I only knew her destination. And I find that as a woman, a Black woman, and as a mother of 2 beautiful daughters, there is so much value in sharing your journey with your children. And that was something that I don't know that our mothers and grandmothers realized how valuable that is for you to pass that along, because you only see your mother in the moments where they have to be strong. You see them where they are now, not where they came from. And so the strength is an expectation, whether it's an expectation of your own or an expectation from your family and your friends. So I think when you asked that question, I really had to sit on it and ask myself, why? Why do I expect myself to be everything for everyone all the time and very little to myself? And it's because I watched my mother do it.
Just thinking about this question, it really is a complex question. Being a strong woman is a protective mechanism that a lot of us Black women use, but it's also really a double-edged sword because it can also harm us in many different ways. And has a protective factor, as the speaker before me was saying, it really helps us keep going in the face of adversities and all of the many negative messages we get about ourselves on a daily basis. So imagining not having the strength and the resilience of a Black woman, I can't even fathom what that would be like or feel like, because there's so many negative and adverse experiences we're having on a daily basis. So in that sense, being a strong woman really helps us protect our well-being. But on the other hand, being a strong woman, even if it threatens our mental health and our physical health, you don't stop. It prevents you from seeking help. It prevents you from seeking medical and mental health. Although research says that Black women are significantly impacted by mental health, we are the least likely to seek mental health treatment compared to our white counterparts. And that really is a huge factor around the strong mentality that we carry. And of course, there are a lot of factors out of our control in why we don't seek mental health or seek help. But I think that piece and that underlying core beliefs of I need to be strong, I'm expected to be strong. We are socialized as being helpers and supporters of our family, has been the backbone of our family, right? That's the saying, the Black woman's the backbone of. So over time, as we've been socialized in this way, you internalize that belief. It becomes a part of your core belief where you see yourself in this light, in this way. So you carry all of that burden, and it's really hard to separate yourself from your core beliefs. That's why it's so important to seek out mental health, because those are conversations you have in the therapy room with your provider, and not just seeking out mental health, really seeking out mental health with a woman, and again, with a person of color, I think is really valid, because I understand the complexity because I live the strong Black woman on a consistent daily basis. So when I'm in space with other Black women doing the work, It's really not about picking sides. It's also about finding a balance on how do you exist in a world that you need to be strong because it protects you from a lot of things, but also how do you take care of yourself in this dance of managing, keeping things that seem very contrasting of yourself, being vulnerable, being strong. How do you bring those two pieces of yourself together and not feel like you have to pick a side to be on, because you can be both things and still have a healthy, productive life.
Diana or Helena, would you like to add anything about why do we have to be so strong?
You know, one of the things that for me being strong, and I said it like Melissa, of course we have to be strong. Why wouldn't we be strong? And I start my day every day and I think to myself, today's going to be a good day. I'm going to survive. So that strength is also coupled with survival of the fittest. As a woman of color, as a Black woman, when you're going through the journey of your day, there is no question that your intelligence is questioned, your intentions are questioned. You are a voice for many, many things. I would tell you one of the things that I've been thinking about, what does that mean, both in my personal and professional life? And they mean two totally different things for me. Being strong in my professional life is knowing that I have done the work to get where I am. I have to keep my head on straight. I have to show up. Sometimes in the last, 10 days, it's camera off during Zoom calls where there's a tear, or camera off or volume off because I want to be strong. I want to say the right thing, but I don't have the words. So I also agree with Grace that, as someone that has someone very close to me who does struggle with mental health, I would say that seeking mental health is important. And I have, coming from a culture where that is not something that we do, I encourage everyone to do so. I do have my mechanisms of how I keep my mental health protected. They're not necessarily seeing someone that's a licensed mental health professional, but I have my friends and I have the ability to call and say, today I'm not okay. I'm not strong every day, but I definitely think it's important to be strong as a Black woman, as a woman, and continue to push forward and take time out when it feels too much of a burden to be strong. But you've got to be strong.
I just wanted to say I would have to echo what Melissa was saying, because I've had moments where I've heard my children say, well, why doesn't mommy cry? Like, why is she always like so strong? So finally I had to just sit down with them one day and just like let it out. I had to show them that your mom is strong, but she has to, get hers out too. I needed to, inform them that, it's okay to cry. It's okay to not be strong all the time. But I did have a feeling of, I have daughters that I wanted to continue to show that strength for, so, they could follow in those footsteps, to know that they are women. They're beautiful Black women. And it's okay to, have those moments where you're not going to always be strong. So, yeah, I feel like I echo what Melissa was saying, when sometimes people just don't see it, but it does happen. Like, we do have breakdown moments, and I just find ways to go around it and do things that make me feel better in order to, get myself back on the right path.
So Helena alluded to the professional self as a Black woman, right? And oftentimes as Black women, we have to navigate the workplace. What are some of the things that we experience as Black women in the workplace?
There are so many things that we as Black women experience in the workplace. I mean, in the past, I've experienced things like not getting promotions, being told I'm too young or I don't have the experience, and then watching my white counterparts being promoted that are less qualified than I am. I've watched my white counterpart fail up where I have to prove myself in a very different way than others. I've experienced just in general being doubted, being constantly questioned about my decisions, my decision-making process, being asked to go above and beyond to prove what it is that I'm saying to an extent that no one else around me is being asked to do. The workplace can be very difficult. You see things sometimes. I've gotten to a place where I'm like, am I overreacting? Am I overthinking this? But the reality is that I'm not. When you see the woman in the park who, called the cops on the guy who was bird watching, you have to work with those people. Those are the people in the office who will weaponize their tears and their fears and their discomfort with Black people in the workplace. And the fear is real when you know that this is what's happening in the workplace, but you can't prove it. And when it's a real fear, when you have people like that in the workplace that are your supervisor, and you're in fear of losing your job because you're doing everything and probably beyond, and yet and still you can't get past, you can't get promoted, you can't move on. So I think the workplace can be very difficult. It can be very difficult. And I've experienced many things my white counterparts have never experienced that are directly because I'm a Black woman.
This one is really difficult for me. I know a lot of people may not understand. My name has shown to have proved a lot of racism. I recall one day going to an interview, and prior to the interview, I was given a couple of questions before I arrived at the office. And I recalled the boss of the company saying, "Oh my God, I can't wait till you get here. Your qualifications fit everything. I think you're going to be a great fit. Just come in and do the interview and, we'll get you rolling." I walk into the office. I sit down after I sign my name in, and there's two other women that's sitting on the side of me. And the receptionist says, "Diana Garlington." So, I fidget a little bit and grab my stuff, and I walk up to the desk, and she's looking at me, but she's still calling my name. So I'm like, "Yes, I'm Diana Garlington." And she froze. Like, she kind of like, it's almost like they were like, "Wait a minute, that is not who we were expecting." So I actually got to go in to speak to the boss, and he asked me two questions and said, "Okay, we'll call you back." I never heard back from that name. So it's just really weird to be discriminated by your name. Other instances where I was working at a company, and I recall the lady saying to another lady, "Oh, well, I have this degree." And I'm like looking at her, I'm like, "Okay, you have that on paper. I have this in real life. This is what I do." So, that's not an intimidation process for that I'm gonna, worry about. But it's things like that that discourage you sometimes and make you wonder why people feel this way. I just continue to say, like, I get frustrated and I get very upset knowing that this is still going on in 2020, that we have to actually prove ourselves in order to be successful. It's really hard for me.
It's interesting because the existence in corporate America or in the workplace is part of that strong women that we bring to life. There is covert and overt experiences. The covert I can often push forward around, but the overt is probably the most difficult ones. And I have experienced many forms of aggression, and it is a very isolated place for leaders of color in corporate America. Folks that may have a certain view about people of color or leaders of color. I'd rather someone say it to me flat out, overtly, than make covert statements. It exists, and I would say that I learned long ago when to address it. I've also been in situations like Melissa mentioned where it's review time and someone makes a comment about review processes that are absolutely unfounded and unbacked. I have questioned sentences, words, and intentions, and some of it is intentional and some of it is systemic, and it's just the way that this particular leader has been molded, has been mentored. We have to understand that there's layers to workplace discrimination, and some folks do it intentionally and overtly, and some just don't know. I am more afraid of those who don't know what they're doing and doing it versus those doing it overtly. And that's been my struggle, is dealing with young professionals who are the next generation of either directors, VPs, and leaders of the company who are literally going down the road 90 miles per hour and have no level of training when it comes to being sensitive to developing, promoting, and pushing forward leaders of color that are qualified, that should be at the table, but are being passed. And so that's been my experience in my previous company, where I've seen that a lot, and we've lost a lot of great talent because of inequities.
I was listening to everything that was being said, and yes, microaggression, it's a real thing in workplace for being a Black woman. As a young Black professional, I have been in so many spaces where my intelligence and my abilities have been questioned. This need that I have to consistently and constantly prove myself and my worthiness of being in the space that I'm in as a Black professional. So it's really, really real, and it has significant impact on my well-being and my mental health. A couple of years ago, in 2018, I read a study that says that workplace-related stress is now the 5th leading cause of death in the U.S. And for me, that was such a stark realization that these companies and the corporations that we work for, these systems and overt and covert racism that continues to happen has direct impact on us even after we leave the workplace. So I really have been so intentional about my creating disconnect in my work life, in my personal life, because I think for me it's so important, because I had many of times being a young professional where I came home and felt like, damn, maybe I need to do a little more. What's going on? I don't know if I'm getting, if I'm worthy of being in the position that I'm in. And I had to step back and realize that it wasn't me. It was the system that I found myself working in. So I had to be really intentional about just really being mindful and separating work life from my personal life, doing direct self-care after work, making sure that I leave work at home. And I know for some people it's really challenging to do based on the roles, but it's so important to know, because the reality is work-related stress is deadly.
Thank you, Grace.
Angie, I just want to add one more thing to that, and just think that as I'm listening to Grace, one of the things that, I want to also say is that I've had a lot of amazing dialogue in my current role with my current leadership right now, where, I think it's also important to recognize that there are leaders who want to do the right thing, and maybe they need partnership. So I think it's a balance, right? It's a balance of where you can't psych yourself out because you think everyone is looking to do the wrong thing. And I just wanted to say, I gave you an example of about, 4 years ago in a different company, but I've had some incredible conversations, and, look at the pillars of the company, look at the leadership that you are working with, and think about the intentions as the individuals are communicating with you. And I just, in the spirit of just really making sure that we show up and not get angry. And that's my, I'm always questioning intentions. And I've had some great dialogue with my current leadership right now, where not everyone has bad intentions. And so I just wanted to kind of say that as well.
I was going to ask a question about motherhood, but I'm going to pivot a little and ask a question about what are some ways that the community can show up to support Black women? Because we don't ask for help, right?
Angie, I believe lately we do have a lot of women who are starting to leave the I's behind and adding things like NG with it. We're loving each other. We're embracing each other. We're supporting each other. So I feel like if we continue to do these things and stay on that positive path, we'll definitely have a lot of change in our community.
There are a lot of things that our community can do to support women. I know there are a lot of policies that are out there that are trying and attempting to push the agenda of Black women. Black women die at larger rates when it comes to childbirth. Women of color, especially Black women, have more cesarean sections. So there are so many policies that are, even in Rhode Island, that have been at a standstill because we don't have people pushing for those types of policies, because they don't seem to be as big as some of the other policies that are on the table. So I would say the community can start to push for policy change. Talk to your legislators. to be able to push some of this policy. I think the other thing that honestly the community can do to support Black women is when Black women run for office, back them. And don't just back them by sharing a Facebook post. Back them by writing a check. Back them by knocking on doors. Back them by giving childcare for their children while they have to raise money. Help them with their platform. Give them a space. Give them a space of support, because the reality is that in our state and across the country, Black women are not at the table. And when we are the only one. We carry on our backs at those tables, when we're the only one, our entire community. When you see a Black woman who is in a position like that, a Black woman who is looking to come outside of her comfort zone, right? A Black woman who is looking to do better and make our lives in our own communities better by putting herself out there, you back her. You see the woman in work that's trying to run for office, I didn't even know she existed. I am going to write her a check. Back our Black women up. When they say that there is a need and they feel like they are empowered through civic duty and civic engagement, back them up. When they have a policy that they're trying to push because they recognize that no one else recognizes their struggle, back them up. Because there's so many times that I've, even in my own life, where I have asked for help, I have sought help from my own community and communities, white communities, where they'll push their agenda for certain areas and I will back them up. But when it's time for me to be backed up, I don't get the same thing in return. So I will say what the community can do is Black women have been there. We have supported our white sisters. We have supported our other Black sisters. We have supported our Hispanic sisters over and over and over again. And when we say we need your support, back them up.
Listen to Melissa. Thank you.
Yeah, I was saying yes to everything that Melissa said. Yes, yes, yes. And then just in for me in other ways, as you was asking the question, I was thinking what's really important in this time where so many Black women, young women and Black youth, girls get so many negative contradicting messages about themselves on a daily basis. So when you did the a moment of silence for Breonna Taylor, I was like, yes. Because a lot of people aren't talking about that. And this only reaffirms to many Black girls in this deep negative core belief that I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, I'm not enough. So for me, when I think about the village and our personal village, really, really being intentional about validating each other, trusting each other, shouting from the mountaintop love for each other, especially for young Black women. I'm really just thinking about the representation of young Black girls in our space in Rhode Island as a whole, and creating spaces where they can get that validation that they need to move on and be and do the things that will be beneficial to us. Because when a Black woman is successful, as Melissa said, we carry our entire community on our backs. So really putting young Black women in spaces that they build the confidence to keep doing the work. I think that's really important for the village to be a part of developing those spaces for them.
Hilina, how can we show up for you as a Black woman?
I think that it starts with authenticity. Be honest, have dialogue with the women that are in your lives that are women of color. Melissa said it. You've got to ask where their struggle lies. You've got to be able to support authentically. And I think a lot of the times, one of the things that we need to all be cognizant of is that we all exist in our own silos. We have our comfort corner, our comfort zone. We go to the things that we go to. We do the things that we do. I ask the community, next time you're in this space of what you're doing to progress an agenda, a policy, to have some conversations about how to have everyone at the table, look around you and see who's at the table. And if you feel like there is not a representation or equity, call up Melissa, call up Angie, call up Hilina, call up Deanna, Grace, and the hundreds of women that I know that are intelligent, that are capable, that have good intentions, not just for women of color or Black women, that really honestly want to make this world a better place for our children. I ask everyone to get out of your silos, get into a room that you normally wouldn't show up. I have my comfort place. I know that when I get into a certain room and it's my comfort zone, I let my hair down, I can be me. We all have that space. Get out of your own way, invite women of color to the rooms where you don't see us. Some of us are bold enough to show up uninvited, but it's nice to be invited. One of the things that I will also, say is that with the Rise Women's Leadership Conference, which Melissa and Angie helped me launch in 2018, is I refuse to have it be anything but representative of every single woman. But I'm cognizant that I'm a Black woman as well. And so it's important to have everyone's perspective. It's important to understand that not every person has bad intentions, but you can't tell me that a Black woman is in every room that she should be in the state of Rhode Island or beyond. I know she's not. So I ask the community to start thinking about that, to start thinking about the rooms that you show up in, and make sure when there is diversity, there is change. Everyone has to be at the table. You don't have to have the right answers and all the right answers at the same time. But get out of your own comfort zone, get into someone else's world and show up authentically. And that's what I would ask the community to do. Change your ways and show up.
Thank you, Hilina. We have just about 1 minute, and I want to leave it on a hopeful note, since we do have a state with the hope motto. What is your one hope? In a sentence, we have about 2 minutes left. What is your one hope for the future?
My hope is that we stand up and form unity, love, and peace. To echo what Melissa was saying, we need to bring it back to where it took a village. We need those principles back of raising our children as a village. We are missing that in our community right now, and I think we need to bring that back.
My hope is as the emotions are high, we see the rallies and we see the commitment on Twitter and we see the commitments in public statement, that when all of this is out of sight, that it is not out of mind, and that we stand by the commitments that are being made by our communities, that are being made by our politicians, that are being made by companies. My hope is that this is not just yet another response that is going to fizzle the second it's out of the public eye. That's my hope.
My hope is that this dialogue doesn't end here. My hope is that a few years from now, when I'm talking to Darius and Tyson about what happened in 2020, that I could quantify my personal actions and the actions of those who are close to me in the community to have summed up to something good. And that I could tell them the last 15 plus days and many, many more before that I have shared tears with them, that it's not in vain. And the nightmares that my little one has had the last couple of days, it's not in vain. And that this needed to happen. I don't want to look back 5 years from now, 10 years from now, having the same nightmares, crying the same tears, and saying, this time we're going to make change. I am so, I know we're all shaken to our cores, and I am. And my hope is that this fear, that this emotion, that this disruption in the innocence of our children is not in vain, and that this will be the change. And so I ask that's my hope.
I'm thinking about this Winston Churchill quote that says, don't let a good crisis go to waste. I really am hopeful that this time and this space that we are in is the catalyst to some real change that is necessary. And I hope this conversation that we are having here is the beginning for a new day, that my children can live in a world that I want to live in.
Thank you, Grace. Ladies, I'm humbled. My heart is humbled. I am incredibly grateful, filled with joy and gratitude, and I'm incredibly blessed that you all took time out of your day to join us today. On behalf of me, on behalf of the community, on behalf of the United Way of Rhode Island, I thank you.